When you live in a big city, you're not very fond of small towns your parents came from. I didn't expect much from the trip to Glace Bay, but Dad wanted me to go. He even insisted on visiting the Miners Museum. And guess what? I'll never forget this trip.
Over the waters and the ocean's cried, we look to our sons.
What other museum can you go to that a retired miner himself will take you down by the hand and walk you through the mine, explain everything to you very thoroughly, and when you come up, you're shaking your head and you're saying, this is the best place I visited so far in Cape Breton.
People come up and they have tears in their eyes and they're crying because then they realize how tough it was. Most of those kids today really don't know how hard their grandfathers and their fathers worked underground. You had to go underground to make a living. That was the only way that you could make a living on Cape Breton Island. It was a different environment down there. Men underground worked together, they carried on together, and they looked after one another. And it was a different environment.
That's one thing we do, we stick together. There's no 911 down there, so we depend on one another to help us out in a crisis.
That is sure as the sunrise, sure as the sea, sure as the wind in the trees, we rise again in the faces of our children. We rise again in the voices of our sons.
Well, the worst night of my life was underground in 1979, February 24th. We had an explosion. Happened on the back shift. And about 20 after 4 in the morning, we got a word that something happened in 12 South Wall. On that wall, I'd say there was close to 30 men in there.
When you hear a call coming in on the speaker that help is required right away, your blood goes to water. You're not sure, you're not getting the whole story. The last thing you ever want to hear on a speaker is the word fire in a coal mine.
As the light grows dark with the forces of creation, across the stormy sky, we look to reincarnation.
Our grandfathers and our fathers and our brothers and our uncles. This is the blood that flows in our veins, and it's the bones that are in our body. This is our history. This is who makes us up. So we have to preserve it, we have to celebrate it, and we have to make sure the next generation knows about it as well.
When you get your pay, came in a brown envelope with a lot of super paper in it, and one side of the paper would tell you what the coal company's the owner of, and the other side what you owe them. And they would take their money first. So you wouldn't get very much, right? Because the prices, especially at the store, were way up. They could charge you whatever they wanted, right? So things were pretty desperate here.
When the company owned everything, they owned the company houses and the company stores. So when you worked in the mine, you rented a company house for your family. So if you went underground and were killed in a mine, your family was automatically thrown out of the company house. So what a lot of families did is the next eldest boy would go underground so that the family could stay in the house and put food on the table. And a lot of times those kids were no more than 8 years of age, so they started underground at that young age.
Coal mining Cape Breton Island is over, and coal mining stories are dying. This museum keeps it going. We tell the story, the history of Cape Breton Island. Our heritage was coal mining and steel making, and we tell that story, and people are astonished to hear it.
As I walked into the museum, I felt older. I knew where my family came from. I knew their struggle and felt proud that my grandpa, like many others, was a hero. This little town was home, and I promised to come back again when I'm older and maybe to stay.
and the oceans cried. We look to our sons and daughters to explain our lives, as if a child could tell us why. That as sure as the sunrise, sure as the sea, sure as the wind in the trees, we rise again in the faces of our children. We rise again in the voices of our song. We rise again in the ways out of